We all want to create a sense of peace and purpose and meaning in our lives, but we struggle to just sit with ourselves in solitude and face whatever comes up in the moment. We live in a world of constant distraction. All around us, things are vying for our attention and trying to enslave our senses. We have our phone and screens all around us, like constantly just grappling for our eyes and trying to, sink them into their systems and algorithms. And it's feeding us all of these things that, we might not genuinely want to see, but there we are scrolling, and everywhere we go, there's music playing. Have you noticed that? Every shop you go into, there's music playing at all times. And it seems that the world around us is this storm that's distracting us from just sitting in quiet and in solitude and embracing, the stillness within us, right? And I don't think it's our fault that we struggle to do this in the modern world, right? We live in a culture that is telling us at every point, we have to hustle and grind and work harder and do more and do bigger, do better, But, I've done my fair share of striving towards my goals, and, most of the time that hasn't led to deep fulfillment. I've found from my own personal experience that what consistently leads to my own fulfillment is my own capacity to just sit with myself in stillness, and kind of explore the inner world within me, right? And this is not easy. This is not easy to do. A lot of the time, when you sit with yourself, and you force yourself to stay focused and do not distract yourself, by grabbing your phone or listening to a podcast or listening to music or engaging in a hobby, just sitting with yourself and whatever comes up, you might be staring into the eyes of the basilisk within you, right? We might call this like the shadow self or something like this, right? And, you have to learn to face that basilisk. To be truly honest with you, I actually had an entirely different video planned for today. This is a new channel for me, and I've decided to show up weekly and make a video every single week. And I was gonna make a video about adventure, creating a sense of adventure in our lives. But for whatever reason, I feel incredibly flat today, and I didn't have the energy or the capacity to talk about adventure, right? Because I don't feel in an adventurous spirit. Rather, today I feel in a contemplative spirit. I'm sitting here in my room feeling incredibly flat for whatever reason, and that is the theme of the day for me. And I've just been sitting here and unpacking what's going on, and I'm convinced that this is how we can develop a really strong sense of grounding, a really strong sense of inner peace, and a kind of gravity within ourselves, right? I personally think that solitude and being able to sit with ourselves in solitude and embracing our own companionship and our own presence and being content with that and not needing to reach for something outside of ourselves to provide some kind of validation for who we are and the choices that we've made. I think that's one of the paths to true personal fulfillment and gravity. Now, this is a theory of mine. I'm convinced that this is one of the effective paths to achieve this. Of course, I am not a master of this. I'm on the journey of developing a sense of grounding within myself. And, I think we're all on this journey of eliminating the distractions and reclaiming our own power, over our attention, over our focus, our time, our resources, rather than kind of drifting along with the times and being swept up in this storm that is the modern world. And I think that is why being able to sit with yourself, developing this muscle of just sitting in silence, meditating in your room, not doing anything, even if it's just 10, 20 minutes a day, and just embracing your own presence, I think this is a really powerful way to reclaim, authority over your own mind, your own spirit, your own mental faculty, rather than being tossed around in this kind of, washing machine of the world. All of these things are just attacking us left, right, and center. But when we develop this ability to sit with ourselves, we have that grounding within us. So let's explore some practical things that you can actually do, in regards to this. Of course, this is a lifelong journey of learning to sit with yourself and embracing solitude and embracing your own presence. So I would say personally, from my own perspective, one of the most powerful practices that you can do is journaling, right? This is how you can actually, face the basilisk within you. This just, when you sit with yourself, you look within, it might be very confronting what you see, right? Especially if you've been running away or distracting yourself from really facing whatever that is, right? It could be some big emotional, trauma or some kind of life experience that you haven't fully unpacked yet. And I think journaling is one of the most, from my own experiences, one of the most powerful and effective ways to look at that big chaotic thing going on inside and start to untangle it and unpack it. You can seek to understand your own life experience. And I think journaling, when you put pen to paper and when you are able to formulate a sentence and a paragraph and a structured piece of writing in front of you outside of your body, that's when you can start to transmute whatever's coming up. You can turn the basilisk's poison into gold, right? And you can transmute that. And so I would say journaling is definitely one of the most effective practices that you can do, especially if you're gonna try to make a habit of sitting with yourself in solitude, whether it's a daily thing or once every few days or once a week. Just making a habit of that is really effective. And of course, the next one is meditation. Just learning to slow down and developing that muscle. I'm talking here as though I've been meditating for a long time. I haven't. I started meditating about 10 years ago, but it hasn't been a consistent thing in my life until now. I've made a decision this year to be very consistent with meditation because I believe that it's a form of personal hygiene. We can develop this sense of presence and grounding within us for all of the reasons we looked at earlier in this video. So sitting and meditating as a practice. So yeah, those are two ideas. And then lastly, just a kind of like an easier idea to start embracing is just try to detach from inputs. Like, for example, I'm really bad at every time I go out for a run, I need to put on music or I need to be listening to a podcast. I'm going to start to work on, Just going for a walk out in my neighborhood and not having to listen to somebody else talking their ideas into my mind. I'm gonna really try this. Just go for a walk and just be present in my neighborhood, in my body, and just enjoying that experience, rather than having to need this crutch of this podcast that I'm listening to so that I can be more productive in my daily life. And it's kind of like this constant treadmill, this whole productivity thing, hustle, grind. And I'm not saying that stuff is bad. You definitely have to work hard to achieve what you want to achieve. But if you're approaching your work from the sense of true inner grounding, and you have this capacity to sit with yourself in solitude and be present with yourself, whatever comes up, whether it's a basilisk, whether it's a storm, whether it's an empty space, you're okay with that. You can sit with that, and you can just be content, and you can embrace whatever's in front of you in your life from a position of inner power. You can have the high ground in your life, and that way it might make things a lot easier for you. Okay, that's the end of this video. I just decided to talk about this 10 minutes ago, and there we are. Because that's the theme that I'm on today. But I do wish you the best. Good luck with this journey. Let me know how you go below, and don't forget, the journey has only just begun. I'll see you in the next video. Peace.